Finally! Universal Orlando's worst land, a land stuck in the past, frozen in time, is finally meeting its maker. KidZone, you have been sentenced to death by way of wrecking ball and bulldozer. Execution date, January 15th, 2023. Any last words? Folks, can I just say this really quick? For once in my life, Universal has caught me completely off guard by this. Even though KidZone has been rumored to go for years, there were actually permits to tear it down at one point. I did not think they would do this now. I mean, by the time this closes, we'll be about 2 years out from Epic Universe opening, which means that you have a bunch of construction crews working on that project, as well as the new Minions ride in Universal Studios Florida, right? Construction crews at Universal are already stretched thin. And yet they're going through with replacing this land. Presumably you want the replacement to be open before Epic Universe, so that way your other parks are set and ready to go by the time that Epic Universe brings in those new crowds. It is a little strange to me, but I don't doubt Universal can get it done. Now let me preface this by saying not everything in KidZone is closing. For one, E.T. Adventure is not going anywhere, which if you've been following the channel for long enough, you know that, of course, I called it. On top of this, Animal Actors, the Spongebob Squarepants store, and the KidZone Pizza Company are all sticking around. Which means Woody Woodpecker isn't quite dead just yet. Man, that guy makes a mean slice. Now, though all of these are safe for now, I don't necessarily think they're going to be safe permanently. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but don't get your hopes up. But just so we're all on the same page, what is actually closing in KidZone? Well, you have Woody Woodpecker's Nuthouse coaster, Fievel's Playland, Curious George Goes to Town, Dreamworks Destination, which you might remember as A Day in the Park with Barney, and most surprising, and really most disheartening, is the Shrek and Donkey meet and greet, which closed earlier this year when Shrek 4D permanently closed, and was moved to KidZone, which was supposed to be its new permanent location. Of course, Universal talked back and forth about, no, Shrek 4D is closing, but guys, the Shrek and Donkey meet and greet is here to stay, only for it to close less than a year later. Now, even though Universal hasn't said anything about this meet and greet, as far as its future goes, I do think it's going to stay in the parks. It's too popular not to. You gotta have it somewhere, right? It's just like such an easy marketing tool and something that's so fun for the guests to do. However, even though Universal did not say anything about the Shrek and Donkey meet and greet and its future, they did specifically say what would be replacing KidZone. So why am I even here making this video? But because they weren't all that specific. They said, beloved animated characters will take over the space. So really, knowing Universal and what they own the rights to, this really could mean 4 things. For one, it could be SpongeBob. I mean, they're keeping the SpongeBob store around. But I've already kind of talked about in depth why I don't really think this is going to happen, and quite frankly, there are much better IPs in Universal's arsenal that they actually own that they can be using here instead. Another one that's kind of along the same lines as SpongeBob is Pokemon. Of course, Universal has the theme park rights to it, and it seems pretty obvious it's the highest grossing franchise of all time. But even though Pokemon has a long-running animated series, if Universal was bringing Pokemon to this land, would they really say beloved animated characters? Wouldn't they say something about video games? Kind of seems a little odd that the first thing you would associate with Pokemon is animation. I don't know. That seems a little weird. At this point, even though I do think Pokemon is going to be coming to the parks at some point, I don't think this is the time and I don't think this is the place. Based on the beloved animated characters clue we got, really there's 2 different properties you can go with. And that's either Illumination or Dreamworks, the 2 animation studios that Universal owns. For those unfamiliar, Illumination's big property is Despicable Me and the Minions, and of course, they already have a ride for that in Universal Studios Florida, and it seems they're getting another one to replace Shrek 4D, which of course Shrek is a Dreamworks property. So Illumination's getting a pretty decent presence in this park, but it's only with one of their franchises. However, it's not like they have many other franchises to choose from. Outside of Despicable Me, Illumination has Secret Life of Pets and Sing. That's it. The only other movies they've made are Dr. Seuss movies, which of course are already featured at the resort. And in looking at Secret Life of Pets and Sing, well, they definitely could find a place in this land. I mean, Secret Life of Pets has a dark ride that was just opened pretty recently over at Universal Studios Hollywood, and Sing has a show over at Universal Studios Japan. So there is some already existing attractions that Universal can pull from to use for this land. However, there are a few issues. For one, neither of these IPs are big enough or have enough meat on their bones to fill in this whole space, right? They could not do a single IP land with just one of these properties. It just wouldn't be able to happen. So you would have to put them together if you wanted an Illumination land. But then you kind of run to the issue, which I know this might not really matter to kids, but you have one world in Secret Life of Pets where humans and animals exist alongside each other, and animals are just like they are in real life in the sense that, they're on 4 legs, whatever, right? However, in Sing, there are no humans, and animals are anthropomorphic. They stand up like humans. Putting those two in a land together kind of seems like a conflict of interest to me, but, it's a land for kids. I guess you can make it work. Who cares? But without dwelling on Illumination too long, let's talk about the real contenders, okay? And that's Dreamworks. Dreamworks, of course, just lost their only ride in the whole resort, Shrek 4D. Now, they are getting a whole land for How to Train Your Dragon in Epic Universe. Presumably, that's still a rumor, but it seems pretty likely, and though, yes, that would definitely improve Dreamworks' standing within the resort, Dreamworks has too many great franchises for you to just build a How to Train Your Dragon land and be like, oh, no, that's all the Dreamworks we need. No. There is way more ammo in this gun that Universal should be using. Now, within Dreamworks, there are a few key franchises that stand out as actually legitimately having a chance to fit in to this space. For one, Madagascar. 3-movie franchise, 1 spin-off, and a TV series. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good run. On top of this, they had a theme park land already in a Universal park. That was back in Universal Studios Singapore, where, unfortunately, this year it closed to make way for another Minions land. Now, I say unfortunately, but this land sucked. I'm sorry. It was absolutely barren. The one ride they had, though, was kind of unique in the sense that Universal doesn't usually do this type of ride. It kind of looked garbanzo beans, I'm not even gonna lie. So don't shed a tear for this thing, okay? And also, listen, there's a good chance that Madagascar could find its way into this land. On top of Madagascar, you have Kung Fu Panda, which just opened up a brand new land at Universal Studios Beijing, and not too long ago, also got a brand new ride over at Universal Studios Hollywood. So Kung Fu Panda not only has multiple theme park attractions, but they've all opened up within the last couple of years, indicating that Universal is really hot on Kung Fu Panda right now. On top of this, they're kind of in a similar boat as Madagascar, as they have 3 movies already, with the 4th one already announced to be on the way, and there's also been, I think, about 2 spin-off TV shows. Now, though I would say this puts Kung Fu Panda in a really good spot to potentially fill in at least some of this space within this land, I don't necessarily see any of the existing attractions that they have coming to this park, except for maybe some of the flat rides. I mean, the ride over at Universal Studios Hollywood was the same type of ride as Shrek 4D, so the odds of them bringing that back is probably pretty slim. On top of this, like the Madagascar boat ride, the Kung Fu Panda boat ride sucks. I'm sorry, it looks like garb. And of course, I've ranted about that enough already. But that then brings me to Trolls, a newer Dreamworks property that I'll admit I know jack crap about. I've never seen a single one of these movies, and I hate to say it, but I don't really plan to. But the property is showing some legs. I mean, it has 2 movies already, a 3rd one's on the way. And unlike a lot of the other Dreamworks properties I've already mentioned, it seems that this property maybe is geared a little bit more towards young girls, which actually could make it a really good fit because, like Dreamworks' movie catalog, the theme parks don't really have a whole lot of IPs that are super geared towards girls. So that could be a really good fit when you think about it. However, as it is a newer Dreamworks property, there are no existing theme park attractions at any of the Universal parks for it. However, there are walk-around characters, but same could be said about Kung Fu Panda and Madagascar. And that brings me to the Godfather, the stud, the Don of Dreamworks Animation, and not even just Dreamworks Animation, Universal Animation for that matter. The guy who started it all, Shrek. I know what you're saying, you're like, dude, they just closed a Shrek ride. Why would they bring it back already? Well, my friend, Shrek is the biggest animated property Universal owns. Yes, there hasn't been a new movie in the franchise in over a decade. And yet, Shrek is the most popular, most well-known of any franchise I mentioned so far, except for Pokemon and Spongebob. But as far as anything Illumination or Dreamworks goes, Shrek is by far the most popular. Why? Not just because his movies were great, and because they were seen by a lot of people, and because they also were some of the highest grossing anime movies of all time, but there's also the internet factor. If you're old enough to be on the internet, then you know who Shrek is. I can't necessarily say the same about the rest of these properties. You know who Shrek is because he shows up in a million jokes and a million memes all across the internet. Which really means, as far as an age range goes, Shrek's age range is stupidly large, right? You probably go from the youngest people who are on the internet, probably around like 10-ish years old, give or take, up through people who were young enough to watch the movies when they came out, right? Think about in their 20s and 30s. And the parents who brought their kids to go see those movies in the first place, who are now in their 50s and 60s, right? I mean, the age range is stupidly large for people who know who Shrek is. There's a reason why, for the longest time on Universal's gift bags, Shrek was one of the IPs that was on there. 4 movies, 1 spin-off, bunch of TV specials, theme park rides in Universal Studios Orlando and Universal Studios Hollywood before, of course, being closed, and a whole land in Universal Studios Singapore, themed to Far, Far Away. And you're going to tell me, just because they closed Shrek 4D, that he doesn't have a chance? You're crazy, man. You're absolutely insane. But it doesn't just stop there. As far as Shrek's world goes, it is the best world to incorporate into a theme park. There's so many different locations and places that are mythical and fantastical that you could work into a land that people would want to see. I can't necessarily say the same about Kung Fu Panda and Madagascar and Secret Life of Pets, which are based on real life locations. So I'm just going to come right out and say it. If there's any property that is going to take over this whole land by itself, right? It's just a single IP land. If there's any property that can do that, it is Shrek. However, I don't actually think this is going to be a single IP land. I know, you're shocked. That's pretty much been Universal's mantra ever since the Wizarding World opened in 2010, is you gotta make lands that are super immersive, all themed around one IP, but it just doesn't make sense for this land, even though you have at least one IP in Shrek, and you could probably do it with others like Kung Fu Panda and Trolls, that could fill up the whole land by itself. It's not really the smartest business decision to do that. Considering that this is gonna be mainly a land for kids, you don't necessarily have to have it be super themed and super immersive. That's not necessarily needed. What you want, though, is you want to maximize your merchandising benefits, right? You want to sell as much merchandise as possible. And many of these IPs that I already mentioned, you're selling merch for, but you have no attractions to go alongside them. If you had even just one standing attraction for Madagascar, for Trolls, for Shrek, for Kung Fu Panda, for Secret Life of Pets, for Sing, by having an attraction, keep those properties top of mind for the kids walking into those gift stores, the merchandise for that property is more likely to sell. So if the plan is to have a number of different attractions here, why not have each of them be themed to a different property? That way you're maximizing the amount of merchandising benefits you can get from this land. Not to mention, you're also then including as many IPs as possible, which means that, okay, if somebody doesn't really care for Madagascar, well, hey, we got Trolls. Oh, you don't really care for Trolls? Hey, we got Shrek, right? This way, this land can really be a land for any kid out there, regardless of what property they like and they don't like. So, if I had to put my money on it, here's my bet. I think Illumination gets thrown in the trash. Bye-bye, see you later. I think you go with the Dreamworks land, and basically the 4 IPs you use are Madagascar, Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, and Trolls. Those are the 4 that take it up. Maybe there's some small nods to some other properties here and there, but realistically, these are the 4. These are the core 4. I don't know exactly how the layout's going to be, but if I take a guess, I think that the land itself is going to be kind of themed to like the clouds, right? Think about DreamWorks, right? You got the guy in the moon. I think that the whole land's going to be kind of themed to up in the sky, clouds, and then standing out in colorful pop-up stands is going to be these different kind of mini lands with the attractions inside of them for each of these properties. All of them will certainly have meet and greet spots, which of course the Shrek and Donkey meet and greet returning. And I'm thinking probably 1 permanent show, a couple of flat rides or small rides, and then maybe 1 major ride that might not open at debut, but will open probably later on. Now, a lot of you might be pointing out one thing, and that's that Woody Woodpecker's Nuthouse coaster is the same model as Flight of Hippogriff, which of course, if you remember, used to be Flying Unicorn before the Wizarding World got there. It was rethemed to fit in with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So why wouldn't they just do the same thing with Woody Woodpecker, especially you really can't go wrong with a junior coaster? Well, here's the thing. I do think that a junior coaster could be in the land. However, I don't necessarily think it's going to be Woody Woodpecker's coaster, right? If it is Woody Woodpecker's coaster, it's probably getting completely retracked or it's getting replaced by something else. Reason being is, well, when Flying Unicorn closed to be rethemed for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, that ride was only 9 years old. It opened up in 2001. Woody Woodpecker opened up around the same time. It's 2022. The ride is over 20 years old now. The ride has either reached the end of its life cycle or is approaching it. I don't see them just retheming it and repainting it and saying, here's a new ride, right? Like, it's not going to last very long. So it's probably on the way out. Also, might I just say, the Shrekland in Universal Studios Singapore has 2 junior coasters. Just wanted to point that out. Anyways, that's my prediction for what's going to open up here in 2024, maybe early 2025. However, there is one other thing I want to talk about that I think could happen shortly after this new land opens up. And that has to do with what was left over by KidZone. That being E.T. Adventure, Spongebob Squarepants, the KidZone Pizza Company, and Animal Actors. In my opinion, this land is going to have 2 phases, because the land it's taking up is a decent chunk of space, but it's not a lot. I think that they would like to do a lot more with it, and really, you look out in front of E.T., that is a lot of wasted space right there. A lot of wasted potential. So here's my prediction, or at least what I think Universal should do in this case. I think they should reroute the entrance for E.T. into the Hollywood section of the park. Not only would this open up all the space in front of E.T., but it would actually give Hollywood more things to do, giving more people a reason to cut right at the entrance as opposed to going straight and causing that massive bottleneck that we're all familiar with. And then I think they're going to change the entrance of Animal Actors, move it basically slightly over to the left, move it over to where those picnic tables are before you get to the Springfield land, to once again open up more space. And then I think finally at this point, KidZone Pizza Company and Spongebob Squarepants are going to bite the dust. They're going to get axed because we're going to see at that point, with all that land opened up in front of it, we're going to see this Dreamworks land expand down forward to fill in where KidZone had previously completely occupied. So there you have it, folks. A little more of a specific prediction out of me, which you don't typically get, but I'm calling my shots on this one. I've had a pretty good track record recently, I have to say, so why not keep it rolling? But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Do you agree with me? Do you think that's going to be DreamWorks? Do you think it's going to be a mashup land, or do you think there's going to be a single IP? Do you think it's going to be Illumination? Do you think it's going to be Pokemon? Do you think that SpongeBob stands a chance? Let me know in the comments. Love to hear what they say. And remember, you haven't seen anything yet.